Welcome in, everyone. Today, we're diving into an explainer on one of the most profound, deeply moving historical narratives ever recorded, the story of Karbala. We're going to examine the historical texts to unpack the immense sacrifice of Imam Hussain. It's a story all about faith, incredible resilience, and just ultimate, unwavering conviction. I was not born to bow before oppression. That single line right there, it completely sets the stakes for our entire narrative today. You see, this wasn't just some ordinary political skirmish. It was a massive clash of values. Imam Hussain knew that his stance was a matter of absolute spiritual survival, and that sets the stage for everything that follows.
Part 1. The Battle of Truth and Falsehood.
So, to really understand how we even get to Karbala, we have to look at the political catalyst. The ruler, Yazid, takes power, and he demands absolute, unquestioning allegiance from everyone across his empire. But the historical texts make the core logic of this clash super clear. For Imam Hussain, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, accepting a tyrannical ruler would have permanently corrupted the true spirit of the Islamic faith. He wasn't just defending himself here, he was refusing to let the very soul of his religion be destroyed. In this context, submission literally meant spiritual erasure. Part 2. The painful journey to Karbala. Because Hussain utterly refused to submit, staying in his home city of Medina just became impossible. He, along with his entire family, we're talking women, elders, and young kids, they were forced to leave in the dead of night. And before they departed, the texts record this incredibly emotional. Hussain stands at his grandfather's tomb and says, "O Messenger of Allah, your ummah is leaving your grandson alone." It captures this profound sense of abandonment. Here is a man saying a final goodbye, carrying a completely shattered heart, but an absolutely unshakable faith. If we map this out on a timeline, you can really see how this builds into an inescapable siege. They leave Medina, and weeks later, this small caravan is intercepted by a massive enemy army. They're forced to stop on the plains of Karbala. The enemy forces give a stark ultimatum: submit to Yazid or prepare for war. And then, the cruelty really escalates. For 3 agonizing days, the water supply is completely cut off, which leads straight into the ultimate stand on the final day. Part 3. The Scene of Thirst. Now, I want to pause here for a second. When you contrast the massive, heavily armed enemy forces with Hussein's trapped, peaceful, and totally deprived family, do you know what the absolute most painful scene of Karbala actually was? It wasn't the clash of swords or the overwhelming size of the enemy army. No, the true agony was something way more elemental, something happening right. Thirst. For 3 whole days, not a single drop of water was allowed to reach the children. Just imagine the absolute cruelty of seeing a flowing river mere steps away, but being completely blocked from it while your family is suffering. The historical accounts describe these totally heartbreaking cries echoing out from the tents. Al-Atash, innocent children and young girls just crying out for water in the sweltering heat. Mothers holding their babies to their chests, weeping hopelessly because the youngest among them were suffering the absolute worst dehydration. But even in the middle of this unbelievable agony, Allah is with us. Through all the cries of the children and the desperation of his followers, Imam Hussain maintained this unending patience. His faith didn't crack, not even a little. He anchored his suffering in the profound belief that the divine was witnessing their trial. Part 4. Great Sacrifices of Loved Ones. Looking at the battlefield itself, the sources recount these unimaginable sacrifices made by Hussein's closest family members. These were people who stepped forward knowing, without a doubt, they weren't coming back. First, there's Abbas ibn Ali, Hussein's brother. He can't bear the children's thirst anymore, so he fights his way to the river. He fills the water skin, and even though he is desperately thirsty himself, he refuses to drink a single drop while Hussain is thirsty. It's the ultimate act of loyalty. Tragically, on his way back, he's attacked. He loses his arms and ultimately his life, just trying to bring that water back to the kids. Then there's Ali Asghar, Hussein's son. Texts actually note that he bore a striking resemblance to the Prophet Muhammad. So watching him ride out to the battlefield, it was like watching the Prophet himself walk toward danger. When Ali Asghar was martyred, Hussain rushed out to his fallen son and rested his head on his chest. He lost the very person who reminded him the most of his grandfather. And finally, the tents held nothing but grief. Hussain brought out his 6-month-old infant, Ali Asghar, who was dying of thirst. He asked the enemy for just a single drop of water for the baby, but instead of mercy, a devastating arrow was fired. It struck the innocent infant right there in his father's arms. It is just an earth-shattering moment of grief, the final and undoubtedly the most innocent sacrifice.
5.
Part
Imam Hussein's final prostration.
After all of that, the texts describe the devastating final scene. Imam Hussain is standing completely alone. His family is gone. His companions have all been martyred. He's covered in wounds, entirely surrounded by thousands of enemy soldiers. And yet, his spirit is totally unbroken. He never once wavered from his initial stance. As he falls, he performs this final act of prayer, saying, "O Allah, I am satisfied with your will." Right there in his very last moments, surrounded by overwhelming hostility, he chose to bow to God in prostration rather than ever bowing to a tyrant. It's the absolute ultimate display of steadfast faith. Part 6. The Immortal Message of Karbala. So, shifting gears from the deep sorrow of these events, we really have to ask ourselves, what are the eternal takeaways here? The historical sources emphasize that Karbala is not just some history lesson. It's an immortal message for all of humanity. It tells us to stand for truth, even if the entire world is against you. Never lose your trust in the divine. Be willing to sacrifice for your core principles. Never bow to oppression. Because Hussein's stance proves that true victory isn't about escaping death. It's about remaining steadfast in your faith and your morals. The source material offers such a beautiful way to apply this to our daily lives, too. Next time you drink a glass of water, remember those who suffered in the desert heat. Make it a conscious act of gratitude. And when you pray, remember the immense sacrifice it took to preserve the integrity of those spiritual practices. It brings this powerful history right into our daily habits. So, whenever you find yourself afraid to speak the truth, whenever standing up to injustice feels just a bit too difficult or too costly, remember Karbala. It's a profound reminder that courage in the face of tyranny leaves an eternal legacy. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive has given you a powerful new perspective on such a pivotal moment in history.